Hello, my name's Peter Wayne and welcome to the Composer Interview Show. The aim of this show is to ask composers questions that other composers would be interested in knowing about. Things like workflows, plugins, synthesizers, instrumentation, and all that good stuff. So let's learn from each other. Enjoy the episode. So today I have with me Inon Zur, who's worked on over 100 projects on TV, film, and of course video games. Worked on the Prince of Persia series, Fallout series, of course Dragon Age, and a whole range of other iconic game titles. So welcome to the show, Inon. It's an honor to have you on.
Thank you very much. I'd love to be here, and thanks for having me.
So one question that came up when I was looking at all your work was, how are you able to keep your projects sound so different, especially melodically, not just from a point of bringing in different instruments, because obviously you can, bring in different ethnic instruments and that type of thing. You can bring in different flavors, but how do you keep the harmonies and the melodies so different from each project?
This is complicated, and this is always challenging. But I think that you really need to think about each project and really, listen to the story, look at the graphics, look at how the game is being played. And the game, when you look at it without the music, and when you hear about the story and the plot and everything, it actually tells you a story on its own. And this is basically what drives me. So when I'm starting a new project, I don't think about it like, how do I do it different than the previous project? What I try is really to stay loyal to the story, loyal to the game, loyal to everything that is inside, and sort of like make it seamlessly and emotionally connected with the game. And this is how I always start. And for some reason, it always coming very, very different. And each project really tells a different story. And naturally, that's what it's supposed to be. Obviously, I do have my own handwriting, so you could see the connections between projects, and you could hear my style, which is like, but if you take projects like Fallout or Siberia or Dragon Age or Prince of Persia, I mean, they're so different, and I'm using so many different soundscapes and musicscapes that it is different, I guess.
Do you always start with the main theme? Is it?
Yes, usually we do start with the main theme, and even before the main theme, we try to hammer on what will be the right musical direction overall for the game. Sometimes it just goes together. So when I'm developing the main theme, I'm also developing the soundscape. And but overall, the beginning is where you actually put, like, it's like just imagine like an empty paper, like, empty sheet of paper, and you have a palette of colors here. And before you actually paint the picture, you really plan on what is the complexions, what is going to be the color composition inside. And this is what I'm doing with a team. Obviously, I'm not doing it with myself. I'm sending them ideas. We're exchanging ideas. We want to see if we can be inspired by different, scores, or sometimes classical music, or other things that could inspire our project. And only then we will start with the main theme.
One thing I noticed about especially Fallout, Fallout 4 in particular,
Mhm.
was how the music can sit well under everything and doesn't really take over. It sort of tells you the emotion and pushes you in the emotional direction, but it never really sort of stands out as something that you're listening to. It's just as mood music. And so I'm curious to know how you actually constructed it, because I know with the ambient music, it's not just a matter of turning it down. It's a
Yeah.
matter of actually consciously.
Right. And this is actually a big challenge. First, I'm a huge believer that a score, musical score, is something that needs to be felt and not heard. You hear a dialogue, you hear an explosion, you hear a shout, you feel the music. Okay, it needs to be there without you noticing it, but it's create a stare in your emotional systems there, and that's how you get connected. I always say that the music inside any media is the fourth dimension, the emotional dimension. So you could see the colors, you could see the depth, you could see, and you could hear the story, but you could feel the music.
Yeah.
To create it, it is challenging. So you need to take in consideration a few things. First and foremost, you need to take into consideration what is the desirable emotion I want to portray or support. So this is the first thing. Second is, what is the actual sound design that we hear there? For example, if we're in the mountains and it's windy and you hear the wind and the whooshes and the trees and stuff, in order to seamlessly get with this, you will find sound that support the wind, support the crackling of the woods. And you don't play against it, you play with it. And this way, you sort of like the soundscape of the sound effects and the music almost become one. This is one technique. There is another technique that sometimes we're exercising that is the exact opposite. Instead of trying to merge with the overall soundscape, we're going to play something that is totally disconnected and only play the emotions. So let's say that the hero is walking there and it's after sort of like a sad event, and he or she are still in the forest and still in the mountain, but instead of playing the atmosphere around him or her, we're playing what they feel. So I could play like a very melodic string quartet behind it. It will still not going to be that noticeable because it will tell you directly what they feel, you know, with the string quartet music. So there are a lot of options and techniques how to create it, but the most important thing is to penetrate and to really pinpoint the exact emotion. If you really nailed the exact emotion, then the music will become part of the emotional aspect in the scene, and it would be just seamless. And it's challenging, obviously.
At what point in your career did you realize that you needed a team to help? Because I know for many composers, once you start working on higher profile titles, you need people to be able to help, like an agent, a publicist, an assistant. So what advice would you give to composers that are at the point where they're so busy, but they're dealing with all the other things that are non-composer related? So
Right.
how do you
Well, I
go
mean,
from...
you know, a team is something that I always like to have. I never had somebody compose for me like many people in Hollywood. I never had a ghostwriter. And because I believe that when people are approaching me, they want me to write music and not somebody
Yeah.
else. So this is right on the table. However, there's a lot of other, aspects of teams that could help. For example, when I'm writing orchestral music and we're going to record, and I have an orchestrator who takes the main music and puts it on paper. Okay. When we're coming back from the recording, I have a mixer that sits with me here in my studio, and together we're mixing the music with a live orchestra. I do have, of course, the publicist who helps me and put me out there. I do have an agent who, again, look for new opportunities and helps me. So I recommend, of course, every composer to have people that will assist him or her in sort of like the capacity of getting the job, completing the job, delivering the job, everything on time and on budget. And in many cases, you will need help with this.
Who do you hire first? Is an agent the most important thing to get things moving, or an assistant to help day-to-day things? Like, what advice would you give somebody that's just...
It really, really depends, because when you're just starting, then, agent is not going to help you a lot. Because if you didn't do anything significant, then the agent doesn't have anything to sell. All right. And then you probably don't need orchestrator or mixer, because the first projects that you're going to do will be really something that is more inside the box. What you really need in the beginning is advices from people that are already inside the field, and you want to ask them, like, okay, how would you approach that? So it's more like advising. When you start to get engaged inside bigger projects, then it's time basically to get the assistance from everybody. Okay, and it'll start from the orchestrator to orchestrate your music, and after it, the mixer, and then after you delivered it, then you have something to sell. So you have the agent and you have the PR. So it's basically it's like a building blocks, one after the other. And the most important thing I think that you need to build, regardless, two main things. Is relationships with people, personal relationships with people that you started with and that will believe in you, and that anybody that hired you before, make sure that they will hire you again. Okay, this is one thing. And the second thing is really, connect with anybody else in the industry that can introduce to you new projects, or introduce you into new projects. And it's all about personal relationships.
Do you have any advice for composers about collecting royalties beyond the direct fee that you would get paid? Like, have you ever had, I don't know, have you ever dealt with licensing?
This is a huge,
royalties?
I mean, today royalties, because of the world is so divided between audio and digital and streaming and air and everything. It's not as simple as it used to be 20 years ago. So today, in order really to cover all your royalties, you need to do few things. The first thing, obviously, is become a member with any society, BMI, ASCAP, CSEC, and they will collect your royalties. Make sure that in the contract that is written, you are credited as a composer, so you could claim 100% of the writer's share. If the company that you're working with is nice enough, well, they will also give you the ownership, which is the publisher share, but this is rare events. This is one thing, and this is the most important thing. This is where the mainstream of money will come. Everywhere that it plays, they could claim it, but it doesn't stop there. Then you have what we call neighboring rights. And neighboring rights is everything that has to do with mechanical and performance. And there are companies like Sound Exchange, for example, and other companies who collects these neighboring rights, and they don't intervene or intertwine with BMI or ASCAP. They're doing their own thing, okay? So this is the second thing. And then there are the, advertising royalties who are being derived primarily from YouTube. So when music of you or played on YouTube and before, after, in the middle, there is advertising, there are specific companies that will collect that. So you need to do this.
Okay.
So it's just a lot. And if you want to get as much money as you can out of the music that you write, and I really recommend that, then you need to cover all these bases.
Mm-hmm. So what advice do you give to new composers just starting their career?
Okay, so it's, I always divide the success of someone into three, okay? The first is his or her ability to compose the right music to the project. And so they need to be just good. They need to study music. They need to listen to music, and they need to write music. They need to be experts in what they do. And they need also to develop their own handwriting within the music that they do, so they could be separated from the crowd. And this is only for what they do, okay? And it has to do only with the capability and capacity of these composers and what they do, and the most, good and expert and fast, as they're becoming, and their production, sounds good, the better chance they have to get a gig. This is the first part. The second part is the actual work ethic. So you could be amazing, composer, but if you started working with somebody and somebody told you, all right, this is great, but we want to change A, B, C, D. And it's just like, what do you mean change? This is my music. How dare you change my music? Boom, you fail. Okay? So basically your work ethics, meaning how to work with a company, how to respond on time, how to make the desirable changes, how to deliver on time, you need to really make working with you fun and seamless, because they have so many other problems. You do not need to become their problem. You have to be part of the team. So knowing how to be a team player, that's the second part. Okay, so you're a great composer and you're a great collaborator. The third part of success, I call it sort of like the luck/opportunity aspect. Being in the right time, in the right place in the right time, and taking advantage of it. And this has to do a lot with luck, okay? But also, you need to develop skills to basically recognize an opportunity and also create opportunities for you, so it's not going to be as lucky. And this is basically has to do with your antennas. You need to be all the time open for opportunities, all the time thinking, okay, what's here, what there, how this could be an opportunity for me in order to get there. So this kind of ability is something that you develop through time, but it's as important, because when you have the musical capability, the know-how how to work as a team player, and the ability to recognize opportunities and to seize it, then this is pretty much, your, how to succeed recipe.
So do you use much outboard equipment, outboard gear, or do you use a lot of plugins?
I actually could show you a little bit if you would
Yeah,
like me
that would be
to.
awesome.
So
That would be awesome.
let me walk you to my studio. Right now, this is the office, and now we're stepping into the studio, and I can show you. So basically, this is the um, the layout of the studio, and you could see that it's shaped like in a bit of a weird, but lots of angles and shapes. Okay, now my way of sending signal is actually heavy on the analog aspect, because what happened is like the music is being generated from the computer. Okay, now, but from the computer it goes through the clock and into a summing machines, and these are like high-end analog summing machines. So all the music goes there, and they're being summed there, and then they're being output as 8 stereos. Okay, and from the 8 stereos, they're being actually summed into 1 stereo. But before they go back to the computer, they're going through the manly massive passive, which it gives it sort of like, another analog aspect, and only then it streams back to the computer. So it travels through a lot of high-end gear and outboard gear in order to get the music the way I like it.
So what other outboard gear was there? You only mentioned the master channel. What was like the 8 stems? Do they go through different chains and that type of thing?
Yeah. I mean, basically, the APIs are the summing machines, okay? And then the mainly massive passive is sort of the analog equalizer. And then I have few reverbs like the Bricasti, and even Tide, which does outboard reverbs that I like to use. So, yes, I'm doing a lot of things inside the box, but I'm definitely using some outboard gears.
Awesome. So what are your favorite plugins when you're in the box?
It's there, it depends. Like if I really want to do something that is bold, I'll use the Wave L3. If I really want to use like a huge reverb, I'll use the Valhalla Shimmer. If I want to use like something that is more realistic ambient, I'm using the Altiverb. If I'm, so basically every time there is something that is called on for any plugins to be, and it's, it is, depends on what I need, basically.
How about for sound design? Do you have any plugins that you use to manipulate sounds in different ways and that type of thing?
Yes, I like to use the Morph filter, which I'm usually sort of like automating it, so it'll create like this special. The Morph filter is really, really cool on Cubase. I also using Chorus sometimes, and other elements. Sometimes I'll use the stereo enhancer, basically, and it depends. Like in a very vast, big ambient cues, I like to enhance it so everything is going to be stretched. We get both right and left. So yeah.
So just about Cubase, for the power users out there, what special tips and tricks to speed up your workflow have you discovered recently, or
I mean, you need to know Cubase well enough, basically, to create fast edits, to control each sounds, but it's more about building your own palettes and palette of sounds. I'm using 4 slave machines, which has the Vienna Ensemble Pro on them, with tens and tens and tens of libraries. Many of these libraries I actually built myself,
Mm-hmm.
and we sampled it myself. So it's my own signature libraries, which actually helps create my own sounds. So yeah, it really depends. But no, Cubase is great.
So how do you go about recording your own sample libraries? And how do you edit them? And I assume you use Contact, would that be correct? And
Yes, it's basically I have an assistant that one of his expertise is taking what I'm recording.
Mhm,
Um, Sometimes like weird sounds. I could bow some weird vases or do like a hit on piano and do all these kind of weird
mhm,
things. And he takes it and he makes either pads from it or loops from it. So it
mhm,
becomes sort of like weird organic loops and stuff. And this is how we build my own libraries. Or sometimes I'll go and record an orchestra. Then I could have the orchestra play like, weird elements and effects.
mhm,
And then we take it and we plug it into Contact. And then we're creating like very interesting patches
mhm,
that we could also emulate. And it becomes a whole library.
mhm. So how about your template? Does it change from project to
Oh,
project?
yeah. Yeah,
Yeah.
tremendously.
Mhm,
But I do have about like 10 to 12 go-to basic templates.
mhm,
And so it's not that I start from zero when I'm starting a project. I just remember which one is which one, and I'm looking, and it's like, all right, so that's going to be a good base for this project. And then I start to change, and I start to add stuff, and then it becomes its own template.
mhm,
And then I could take that and change it. So I don't have like I don't use identical templates, but I definitely use like base templates, and then I'm branching out with anything else I want.
mhm. So what are your favorite sample libraries? And do you have any tips and tricks for blending different sample
So
developers
so basically, it's
when you layer things?
there's so many libraries out there, and I cannot say that there is one library that is like my go-to library. No. What I do is like first, each library has its own strengths. For example, LA scoring strings, they have some great like marcato and spiccato sounds that I could use that for it. Um, Symphobia has like a great big string sounds that I could use. But anything that I do, usually I'll layer at least 2 to 3 libraries with it, so it'll create its own sound. I rarely use one library for one sound.
Mhm,
And this is the way I work. So that's why I'm using so many libraries.
mhm,
Each one of them, has its own good things and a less good thing. And just the combination that,
mhm,
you know, I'm doing it together, this is what creates, the
mhm,
sound it'll be like as reliable, warm, and um, expressive as I
mhm.
can be.
Do you do much to glue the sound together when you're using from different developers?
Yeah, basically, but many times I will play them separately and
Okay.
not just have like one sound played by many patches,
Hmm.
because each patch has its own
Hmm.
touch and stuff. So it's a process.
Hmm. So how much time do you spend tweaking CC, MIDI CC, and that type of thing?
Not a lot. I don't have time. So,
Hmm.
but I'm also working very fast.
Hmm.
And the thing that makes it easier is that I know what I want to hear.
Hmm.
Okay. So if I know what I want to hear,
Hmm.
then, I know how to get there.
Hmm.
And so it makes, and it's just a lot of experience and many years of working.
Hmm. So how much creative freedom do you get working on big titles?
A lot. Um, Especially from Bethesda,
Hmm.
because I'm working with them for so many years, and they will want me to create my own sound, and then they will start tweaking and changing stuff. But I always start from almost like an empty palette. It's great, but it's also very challenging because I need to every time surprise myself and them with new elements. So yeah, but overall.
So what is your day-to-day composing like every day? Like what is the day-to-day workload? Get up, what do you start with? Do you check emails? Do you just jump straight into composing?
Yeah, I mean, I'll check emails first, see if there's any fire I need to put out before, and then basically I turn off everything and start composing. And usually every day I do have like the workload of the day planned. So I'll know what to do. I know what I need to really do today, and I'm not going to stop until it's done. But usually after 8 to 9 hours, it's done.
So you always have the plan from the morning. This is what I'm doing today, and don't talk to me for the rest of the day. This is what I'm doing.
Well, not exactly. I'm very, very flexible, and if something is arising, then definitely I could jump between. But and I'm alone here. Nobody's here. It's like, but that's why at 5 o'clock it stops and it's family time, and it's totally separated. And when I'm with my family, with my kids, with my wife, this is, totally there. So, yeah.
That's awesome. So that's pretty much all the questions I have. Thank you so much.
Great questions, of course.
The interview. I really appreciate your time.
Of course, Peter, and thank you very much for having me. Thank you. Bye-bye.